everyone, Shady here from MobaCast, bringing you the best in pro guides from MobaFire.com. Now this week we'll be taking a look at Element's Udyr Jungle Guide. F Tigers, it's Phoenix stance time. Udyr is a tanky DPS champion with a unique skill set revolving around 4 stances and no ultimate. Each stance is capable of being leveled 5 times, and this means that not every stance will be max rank at level 18. Udyr's passive, Monkey's Agility, plays on these stances by increasing his attack speed by 10% and dodge by 3% each time he activates a stance. This effect can stack up to 3 times. All stances have a 1.5 second global cooldown. Udyr's Q ability is Tiger Stance. Upon activating the stance, Udyr gains an attack speed buff for 5 seconds, and his next attack deals magic damage over 2 seconds. While in Tiger Stance, Udyr's attack speed is persistently increased, stacking with the activation effect. Udyr's W ability is Turtle Stance. Upon activating Turtle Stance, Udyr gains a shield that absorbs damage for 5 seconds, or until it has absorbed the max amount of damage. While in Turtle Stance, Udyr's attacks cannot crit, but they restore a percentage of damage done in health and mana. Udyr's E ability is Bear Stance. Upon activating Bear Stance, Udyr gains bonus movement speed for a few seconds, with bonus and duration scaling with rank. While in Bear Stance, Udyr's attacks maul his enemy, stunning them for 1 second. This effect can only occur once every 6 seconds per target. Udyr's R ability is Phoenix Stance. Remember, Udyr's last ability is not an ultimate and behaves similar to his other stances. Upon activating Phoenix Stance, Udyr sends out a circle of fire, dealing damage to nearby enemies for 5 seconds. During this time, Udyr's ability power and attack damage are also increased. While in Phoenix Stance, every 3rd attack will launch a cone of fire in front of Udyr, dealing magic damage to enemies in front of him. Now that we know what Udyr does, let's talk about building him for the jungle. The first area we're going to cover is runes. For marking glyph runes, we'll be taking attack speed. Attack speed is useful for any jungler, but Udyr especially benefits from this stat. The faster Udyr attacks, the more Phoenix's cone will proc, clearing camps faster. Udyr also regains health and mana faster through Turtle Stance. For seal runes, we'll be taking dodge. This, combined with his passive, as well as some masteries we'll discuss later, bring his dodge to almost 20% before dodge boots. Now remember that 1% of dodge is essentially 1% damage reduction against any auto-attacking champions, as well as the jungle minions. Finally, for quintessences, we'll be taking movement speed. Udyr has no abilities to initiate with other than the raw movement speed gained from quintessences and Bear Stance. Combining movement speed quints with Bear Stance, as well as the item build we'll discuss later, you can be certain you're moving way faster than anyone else on the map. Movement speed also affects your jungle time when moving from camp to camp, as well as assisting with counter jungling or even jungle ganks. Next up, let's talk about summoner spells. First, we'll be taking Ghost. This allows you that extra movement speed you need for chasing, escaping ganks, or even just moving quicker through team fights. This enables you to get to the important targets, which are generally in the back. This can be traded out for Flash if preferred. Our second summoner spell will be Smite. Smite is a jungler's best friend, and you should never be caught jungling without it. Smite enables you to clear camps faster, steal enemy buffs, and guarantee last hits on Dragon and Baron. For masteries, we won't be taking the typical 9-0-21 jungling tree, or the 21-09 offensive jungling tree. Remember that dodge we were talking about earlier? Remember how movement speed is important for Udyr? Well, let's combine the two. Taking advantage of Udyr's ability to destroy jungle camps simply through his stances, we'll be taking 1 point in Smite, 14 points in defense, and 15 points in utility. While we are still taking the typical jungling masteries in Smite and buff durations, as well as improved Ghost, placing these extra points in defense enables us to be both tankier and gain 10% movement speed every time we dodge. Now, let's discuss Udyr's jungling. With this build, Udyr has 2 jungle paths that suit him best. The first path we will cover is the aggressive path. This path allows Udyr to clear the jungle by the 320 mark and set up for a gank by 330 with 400 to 500 HP. The aggressive path requires the help of teammates. Only use this path if you have already discussed it with your team and they have agreed to help you with it. Attempting to jump into a random team without asking for help is guaranteed to make this path fail. For items, we'll be starting off with Boots of Speed and 3 health potions, giving us 398 movement speed at level 1. Looking at the minimap, you can see that Nasus is guarding my race, while bottom lane is guarding Golem buff. If possible, mid lane should also cover the second river entrance by sitting in the bushes. For the aggressive path, we will start at wolves, which spawn at 140. Have an ally help you clear this camp by hitting the large wolf once or twice, or using an area of effect spell on the whole camp. Make sure they do not leash the wolves, as this will cause the pull to take longer, and also be sure they stay out of experience range. It's best to have a ranged character help here. In this clip, Annie has taken her AoE spell first to both damage the entire camp and stun them, letting me take less damage. Clear this camp without using any health potions and move on to the golem buff before it spawns at 155. At golem buff, make sure you have an ally leash the camp. Leashing is when an ally attacks the minion first, causing it to run to them instead of attacking you. The more damage your allies can do here, the less damage you will take overall, and the more health you will have of finishing your jungle path. Asking them to take it to 900 or 800 health before going to their lanes is usually best. Note that it is possible to clear golem camp with a generic one-hit leash, but this will not give you enough health to gank after clearing your jungle. Next, clear Wraith camp, being sure to stay in Phoenix stance for 3 hits to proc the cone of fire before switching to turtle, then use Phoenix stance again to finish up the camp. Moving on to the golem camp, switch between Phoenix and turtle stance while clearing the first golem, then switch to turtle to finish the second one to regain as much health as possible before clearing red buff. Once at red buff, focus the lizard down, allowing the AoE from Phoenix stance to damage the smaller drakes. Switch to turtle every so often to gain the shield and regain a small amount of health and mana. Don't forget to keep your passive at 3 stacks by stance dancing to give you the full benefit of bonus attack speed and dodge. Now that we have cleared the jungle at around 3 minutes 30 seconds with 400 HP, it's time to initiate a gank. Most lanes will be level 2, approaching level 3, so you should be a full 2 levels higher than your enemy with 400 move speed and double buffs. Try to gank a lane that has some form of CC. In this clip, you'll see Jax gets a little bit too close and gets withered by Nasus. I run in with a stun, forcing Jax to flash and use exhaust to keep from being killed. Even if a gank doesn't end in first blood, forcing the enemy to use one or even both of their summoner spells is still a victory. Let's take a look at this path again, this time noting a couple mistakes that were made. As you can see, clearing the wolves goes well, although slower without an AoE ability to help damage the smaller wolves, so I am a bit late when showing up for the blue buff. Also notice that as we approach the blue buff, our top lane Nasus is here. It's very important to watch the race because if any part of this path is counter jungled, it means you won't be hitting level 4 at the correct time, and you need to waste time either invading the enemy's jungle or leeching off of a lane. Also note that Vayne missed a roll and stays in EXP range for too long, causing me to smite later and take more damage from Golem. Also take note of when we're using our health potions. You should use your first health potion as soon as you start taking damage from Golem, or if you prefer, as you transfer over to the Wraith camp. Use your next health potion after clearing the Wraith camp and starting the Golems, and use your last one after clearing the double Golem camp and starting red buff. The idea behind this is to never be using a health potion when you're already at full health. Your health potion should always be used to keep you close to full health while never being wasted. Now the jungle is cleared at around the 330 mark, we're going to put some pressure on Nidalee before she hits level 6 and becomes ungankable. Even though Nasus doesn't have enough mana for Wither, he still gets her in close enough at half health to allow me to use Bear Form to land a stun. After this, red buff and a quick Q from Nasus allows us to bring her down quickly for first blood. Now let's take a look at the passive route. While the passive route is slower, it allows for a safer jungling path as well as the opportunity to recover from being counter jungled or ganked. Note that we are starting with cloth armor and 5 health potions at blue buff instead of boots at wolves. This allows your teammates to guard other areas of the map and be closer to the lanes when the minions spawn. This build is best used in solo queue or pub matches, where team communication is not at its best. After clearing Wolf Camp, we head to race. However, Shaco is waiting in the bushes with a nice surprise for me. After being feared, I attempt to fight him, forcing him to use Ignite and Exhaust on me before backing off. I use Ghost to kite him towards the tower, giving Gragas the chance to come in and clean up. Taking Cloth Armor first gives me the chance to recover, allowing me to take down double Golems at level 2 with no fear of dying. With my extra health potions, I can guarantee that I'll stay alive to full clear the jungle all the way back towards bottom lane. With jungle clear, and knowing that Kale and Vayne both have CC in bottom lane, I set up in bottom lane for a gank. Moving in, I approach in bear form to attempt a stun. After being exhausted, I switch to turtle to soak up any extra damage, and then back to bear form to land stuns. I switch to Phoenix to pump out as much damage as possible, taking down Misfortune. Switching my focus over to Riven, I stay in Phoenix form to make sure I proc the AoE, and then switch to Turtle once I realize she's targeting me. I switch over to Bear to catch her as she runs, and unfortunately, Kale comes in and cleans up my double kill. As you can see, Udyr is an incredibly flexible champion, able to start with multiple item sets and multiple jungle paths depending on the team composition and enemy jungler. Udyr synergizes well with movement speed and attack speed, and relies on his abilities for any given situation. That being said, let's talk about Udyr's recommended items. Keep in mind the Elements Guide is a bit outdated, and although Udyr hasn't changed much, generally accepted items for him have. Also remember that item builds reflect your personal style of play and are not a set rule, but a loose guideline to consider. Starting out, we're taking boots or cloth armor with health pots for jungling. From here, the obvious item to rush is Wriggles, before upgrading boots to either Ninja Tabby for increased dodge, or Mercury Treads to reduce crowd control. To round off our core build, if you took Ninja Tabby, grab a Philosopher's Stone to upgrade to Elisa's Miracle for the reduced crowd control, Udyr's only weakness. If you took Mercury Treads, grab a Heart of Gold for the health, armor, and gold for 5, allowing you to roam for ganks without suffering gold loss from lack of farm. Keep in mind that even though gold per 5 items do not stack with themselves, they still stack with items of the same type with different stats, so Heart of Gold will stack with the Philosopher's Stone. The last item for our core build is Wit's End, giving us the MR we're lacking and huge attack speed boost for Phoenix Stance and Wriggle procs. From here, if you're doing well, you can rush for an early Triforce. If team fights have started early, or if your team is lacking a tank, upgrade to a Randuin's Omen, or purchase a Banshee's Veil, depending on the enemy team. Grabbing the other option later will round out your tankiness. Udyr does not require a large amount of damage items to deal effective damage, so getting tanky items first is always a good choice. Lastly, Spirit Visage synergizes well with Turtle Stance and Wriggles, and is a nice, cheap tanky item for Udyr if the enemy team is heavy on ability power and Banshee's Veil is just too expensive. If the game is going on for too long and you have extra gold and a full item build, sell out Wriggles for a Hextech Gunblade, as Udyr benefits from both the lifesteal, spell vamp, and increased attack damage and spell power, as well as gaining an item active giving him a ranged slow. For Udyr's abilities, take Phoenix, Turtle, Phoenix, then Bear Stance to give you solid ganking and jungling power at level 4. From that point, max out Phoenix first, then Turtle until level 11. This is where we'll be placing our first point in Tiger, giving us the extra damage we need to secure kills on ganks, or the attack speed to split push towers. Place your last point in Turtle Stance, and then max out Tiger, leaving only 3 points in Bear Stance at level 18. Well guys, that's it for the Elements Jungle Udyr guide. I hope you enjoyed the video, and a huge thanks goes out to Mobafire for providing the guide and giving me the opportunity to make this video. I'll see you guys next time.